We weren't looking at houses anymore. We were not working with a realtor anymore. The end of April, I had decided that I wanted to look for another job. I did. The reason I wanted to look for another job is petty. Yeah, it is. I wanted to look for another job because I was pissed off at the fact that I had basically was dependent on him to help with the car note. So I wanted to look for another job where I could afford life all by myself, including that car note, basically where I would make more money. I told him that I was going to start looking for another job. He laughed. And his exact words were, "You're not going to leave Georgia State Patrol." He was like, "I swear you love the niggas more than you love me." He laughed. So that fueled me even more. So I was hitting the pavement hard trying to find another job. I was applying to all kinds of places. Got a phone call from my current job. So this is how I ended up in my current job. Got a phone call, they had sent me an email with a background packet. The background packet was long and extensive, but in the background packet, it asked for my spouse's full name, my spouse's date of birth, and my spouse's social security number. So I showed it to Legion and I was like, "I need your social because, I'm applying for this job. It's a great job. It's way more money. And, we're talking about moving anyway to Cobb County. So this is a God thing." He did not want to give me his social. I showed him the paperwork where I was like, "Look, because we are married, I can't lie on here. So help me." So he writes down his social security number on the background packet. And I eventually turned it in. I scanned it, saved it in my email, and sent it in. And I looked at it one day, just going through it, just making sure I didn't really miss anything. All T's were crossed, all I's were dotted. And I looked at his social, and something about the social seemed different than the social security number that I remember seeing when we did our marriage license. And so for those who you remember in the previous part, I said I had ran his social security number from the marriage license. Nothing came back. So I thought that I had written it down wrong. Basically, what it is that the first three numbers were different on the background packet than what was on the marriage license. If you don't know this, here's a little trivia. Your social security number, the first three numbers, pretty much are dictated by the state you were born in and the state that issued your birth certificate. So he was born in Pennsylvania. So the first three numbers of his social security number should be attributed to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, shit, they probably got like 5, 6 different numbers, 3-digit numbers that your social security number can start with. So the social that was on the marriage license, for example, was probably 1, 2, 3. What was on the background was 4, 5, 6. Both of those social security 3-digit prefixes are issued through the state of Pennsylvania. Again, this is just an example so I can make it clear. So when I saw his social on my background, I immediately knew that was a different social than what I saw on the marriage license. And when I compared, because I had found a copy of the marriage license that we turned in because I had filled it out on the computer. So sure enough, the first 3 numbers were different. The rest of the numbers were the same. So one of two things: either when I ran his background, I did in fact put in the wrong number, or the number on the marriage certificate or the background packet is wrong. So I decided that I was going to roll the dice and take the social from the background packet. Again, this is the background packet that I had to fill out to get my current job. I was trying to get a new job. Okay, so I took that social and I ran a background check on it. What came back on this particular background was all the addresses that the social security number, I guess, had been attached to. So all of the addresses, the states were Georgia, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania. What I did not see was California. So I thought that was weird. I thought, okay, maybe this is not a complete background because clearly he went to San Diego State. It's on his resume. It's on quite a few things. Social media. He didn't have a LinkedIn, but it was on his social media. So clearly he had been to California. So maybe I just need to do a different background check. Also to note, during this time, I think I told you guys he had hit his leg at work. So what was happening was it was getting more and more difficult for him to walk, like put pressure on that leg, on that knee. He was still able to go to work. He was still leaving at 6:15 in the morning. He was still coming back between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. But I clearly could see where he was in pain. He would elevate the knee, ice the knee. It was getting worse. And I was constantly like, "Go to the doctor. Let me take you to urgent care so that they can look at this knee, because you shouldn't still be limping and having a hard time putting weight on that knee." And every single time he was like, "Oh, it's fine. I have a doctor's appointment on Wednesday. The doctor just told me to ice it and to elevate it. This is an old football injury. It happens all the time. It used to happen a lot when I was out in California." So I'm mentioning this knee issue for a reason. But back to the background. So once again, when I ran the background the second time with the second social, it showed me states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. And that's all that I saw in terms of addresses. I didn't see anything for California. So by this point, we're moving into May of 2021. Things are starting to reopen. One of the things that reopened was San Diego State. So I called San Diego State. I called the registrar's office. Someone did answer, and there was instructions on how to request a transcript. I was able to try to request it online. You needed the student's name, and I believe you also need their social. And when I typed it in, it said no results found. I believe that I sent an email asking, this person is saying that they were a student there. Can you verify it? The response I got was there were no records found with that social security number. So I'm like, okay. I asked him about it. What's the deal about San Diego State? He was like, what are you talking about? And I said, why is there no records of you there? Just came right out and said it. Without missing a beat, this man said, well, I was a private citizen. What the fuck does that mean? And what he said is that when he started at San Diego State, his father paid money so that, okay, it's important to say this with a straight face. His father paid money so that his name and social would not be publicized and he would be considered a private citizen. He said that he had a card where all he had to do was show the card. He does not have to give his name. He does not have to give any information because he had that card. He said so San Diego State would not have any record of him, but he was in fact a student there. I said, and you claimed that you played football. He was like, I did play football. I said, so you're saying that the school did not publish your name anywhere and they were in violation of NCAA rules? And he was like, why are you asking all these questions? And I said, I'm just curious. I'm just curious. You're saying that you were a private citizen, but yet how were you in compliance with NCAA if you were a private citizen and they did not publish your name on any roster? So that was his excuse. He was like, all I can tell you is that I was a private citizen. My dad paid for it. Okay. So now I know that San Diego State has no record of him. Now I know that his social security number, at least the one that's on my background packet, only shows that he lived in Georgia, Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania. Okay. So at this point, the pain in his knee is getting worse. It's getting to the point where when he would come home from work, he would take a shower and immediately get in bed, elevate his knee. He was not even eating the way that he used to eat. It was getting to the point where at times, if you remember when I told you all about the miscarriage, they gave me pain meds because I had taken that pill, but the pain meds I was allergic to, so I couldn't take them, but I still had them. So the pain in his knee was getting to the point where he would take one of those pain meds just to get through the night. He was constantly in agony, constantly kind of tossing and turning, so much so that in May he moved into the guest bedroom because I couldn't deal with the tossing and turning thing. And he just said he was more comfortable there. So what at first was I hit my knee at work, turned into, no, it was an old football injury. This has happened before. Turned into, it's painful for me to walk on it. Turned into, it's actually hard for me to work on it. But he was still going to work at 6:15 every morning and coming home between 3:30 and 4. So it is, again, I'm just giving you guys the chronological order of how all this happened. So at this point, we're not looking for a house. I still have not seen the 2 savings account. I'm pretty sure there's no money in those savings accounts. But again, he was going to put in an all cash offer with Amber, the realtor. So I really didn't know what to believe, but I believed what I saw, which is I saw that background is not showing where he went to California. So at one point in May, it was close to mid-May, he calls me from work. He calls me from work, calls me while I'm at work, and tells me that he got a phone call from his stepson. The phone call from his stepson, the stepson was crying and was just absolutely distraught. And I'm at work in my office like, what's going on? And he says to me that the stepson informed him that his stepdaughter passed away, that she died from COVID. The stepson this is the story. The stepson found her in her apartment because they had not heard from her for a couple of days. And she was unresponsive. He called the ambulance. They pronounced her dead when she got to the hospital. So he was calling to tell me that she had died. And he was also calling to ask me if I would object to him giving his ex-wife $2,000 towards the funeral. As I've stated before, and I still am this way to this day. I don't play about death. So when he told me that she died, I immediately went into the, all right, I'm sorry to hear that. Whatever we can do to help, let's help. Because surely nobody would make that up. So he was like, are you okay with that? He was like, we're married. And the agreement was that anything over $500 would be a discussion. So $2,000, definitely. And I said, yeah, that's totally fine. I'm fine with that. He was upset because, again, he was close with the kids. And my heart went out to his ex-wife. It did, because I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. Around May 20th, I decided to do another background check. And I paid to do another background check. This time, I did it with a different company. And not only did it give me the addresses, not only did it give me the states, it gave me addresses, and it also gave me names of people who were like associated with Legion in that address. One of those names was his ex-wife. I've always known, he's always told me the name of the ex-wife, but now I see it when I ran his background. I did a search for her on social media. She was not there. So the address that it showed that she was associated with him, because remember, his story is we got married in San Diego, we lived in San Diego, we divorced in San Diego. Men lie, women lie. The U.S. federal government, which your social security number does not. So he's saying he was always in California. His social security number never showed that he was in California, according to the background check. It did show that he had lived in Georgia at an address associated with the ex-wife. So try to find the ex-wife, could not find her on social media. So I looked in the metro counties to protect her identity. This, I am going to not divulge a lot on this part. I looked in the metro counties in the open record courts. So typically, you can look in like Superior Court or Magistrate Court or Probate Court. So I looked in open records for the different counties, metro Atlanta counties. Let me be clear, metro Atlanta counties. And I looked under her name and I found where they had filed for divorce in a metro Atlanta county. So when he said that he filed for divorce in San Diego and that he was married in San Diego, I was able to find, no, according to the state of Georgia, you were married here. You were divorced here. So I looked under her name, found a record for divorce, and it did show his name. So now I clearly see on my computer that there is a metro Atlanta County court that has a divorce record in the state of Georgia between him and his ex-wife. So I did what any rational person would do because this is still kind of COVID time. Well, not really. It had nothing to do with COVID. Let me take that back. Because of the parameters of the court, you can only do the open records request in person. I did what anybody would do. I told my boss I had to go. I grabbed my purse, grabbed my keys, and I drove to the court to do the open records request in person. The open records request was for the divorce documents. Go back in the story, in the series, and remember I did a background on the ex-wife. I told you all exactly what was told to me. He met her in California. He married her in California. He divorced her in California because she cheated on him. He filed for divorce. She tried to get spousal support. It was going to be a little ugly. He was helping her with the kids. That was the story that was told to me. So went to the court, filled out the paperwork, got the open records request for the divorce decree, for the divorce records. First thing I see, he didn't file, she did. Second thing I see, they didn't make it more than 6 months. I see the date of marriage. I see the date of dissolution, 6 months. Third thing I see, he was served in Metro Atlanta, which means that at the time of the divorce, he was living in Metro Atlanta. California was never mentioned. Fourth thing I see, he filed what is called a pauper affidavit. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to do my best to explain it real quick. Basically, he filed an affidavit with the court saying that he is so poor, he could not afford the fees to pay for a divorce. He couldn't afford a filing fee. He couldn't afford a service fee. That is what a pauper affidavit is for. All of this is in the divorce documents. She had filed. She said it was irreconcilable differences. She was not requesting any money whatsoever. And both of them had signed a pauper affidavit. He was served in Georgia at his previous employment. According to the divorce documents, he was served at like a grocery store. That is what was listed as his employer. And it had a date of when he was served. So I see all of this in one day. I also see where on the divorce documents, she listed her name, her address, and her phone number. So I did what any rational person would do. I wrote down the phone number. There was a 50-50 chance that the number was already disconnected. She could be like me. I'm one of those people. Honey, you can sneeze at a 27-degree angle. I will change my number so quick. You ain't even know what hit you. You can talk to me at 5 o'clock and at 5:05, my number has been changed. So she could have been like me and the number is not even active. Or she could be like some people I know who have kept their number since kindergarten. Either way, I wrote the number down. I left the court and I immediately went back to work. And the same friend who helped me when I had my miscarriage, I told her, I was like, I got this phone number. This is the ex-wife. She was like, girl, you better call. You better call and find out from her. Because I think she said to me, can't nobody tell you what is going on quite like the ex-wife. So I got the phone number, went back to work. My really good friend was like, you better call her. You can use my phone, but call her. So I called her. She answered. I'm going to use aliases. And the conversation went like this. May I please speak with Barbara? This is Barbara. Barbara, this is Shirley. Shirley who? This is Shirley Jones. I am the wife of Legion. Silence. Then she starts laughing. And she said to me, and I quote, if you are calling me, then I know it's bad. I chuckle. And I said to her, I'm not trying to bother you. I'm not trying to disrupt your life. I said, I'm literally coming to you on some woman to woman shit. I said, because you are probably the only person who can help. She listened. She was gracious. And she said, what is it that you need to know? Or what is it that you want to know? And I said, I understand that you and my husband talk and communicate. And she immediately said, what? No, we don't. And I said, okay. She said, one thing you need to know about Legion. She said, whatever he tells you, it is a lie. And she said, again, let's go back to part 1. I told you guys that when he introduced himself or when we met, we actually had matched on 2 different sites. And he was under 2 different names. One was like the actual birth name. The other one was a nickname variation of that name. That's the name I know him by. So for example, if his name was Matthew, he had a profile under Matthew and then he had a profile under Matt. I would have known him as Matt. So she said to me, she was like, I don't even know who Matt is. She was like, that's not even his name. And so I knew what his actual government name, and she was like, no one calls him Matt. She was like, that must be his new personality. Or she was cracking a joke, but she was like, anything he tells you, you need to know is a lie. So I just asked her, I said, what was your experience? I said, because I can tell you the story he told me. And she stopped me right there. She said, whatever he told you was a lie. She said, let me guess. He told you I cheated on him. Let me guess. He told you that I wanted money from him. And I said, yeah. And she said, yeah, that's a complete lie. So we had a conversation where she told me how they met. They didn't meet online or anything. I said, well, were you guys ever in California? She said, no. She was like, that man ain't never been from past the East Coast. So I said, okay. So you guys have always been in Georgia? And she said, yeah. She's like, we got married in Georgia and we got divorced in Georgia. And that's when she asked me, how did you even get my number? She said, because I want nothing to do with him. So how did you get my number? I said, I'm gonna tell you the truth. It ain't gonna make me look good. I told her, I said, this is what happened. And this is what led to me doing research. And this is how I got your number. And she laughed. She was like, wow. She was like, normally I would be freaked out. She said, but under the circumstances, she was like, wow, okay. She said, yeah, if you're calling me, then it must have gotten pretty bad. She said, so what did he promise you? And we talked for about 35 minutes. She asked me in that phone call, she said, look, I want nothing to do with him. I have not spoken to him since our divorce was finalized. She said, so I would just appreciate if you keep me out of whatever's going on with y'all. And I told her, I said, I give you my word. I will never tell him I spoke to you. I said, I give you my word. I said, this conversation is for me. It is not for me to use in any sort of legal litigation, nothing. This is for me. And I said, I don't plan to call you again. I don't plan to be a disruption in your life. I just needed to know, how bad is it? And she paused and she said, it's bad. She said, I don't know what all y'all got going on. She said, but if it's anything like what it was for me, it's bad. So we talked a little bit more. She was very encouraging. She was like, girl, do not blame yourself. She said, I went through that and I had blamed myself. She was like, this is not on us. This is on him. She was like, he is a master liar, a master manipulator. She said, I ignored the red flags. So she was like, do not feel as though this is on you. We talked about there's an ex-girlfriend that shares the same name as his aunt. She and I talked about her. She said the reason why they broke up, because the ex-girlfriend, I didn't know this, the ex-girlfriend had reached out to her about 6 months before he met me. And so the ex-girlfriend lived in Douglasville. On Legion's driver's license, he had a Georgia driver's license with a Douglasville address. What he told me was that it was the address that his sister, because remember I told y'all his sister Shantae lives in Douglasville. She's a nurse, married with 2 kids. So he told me that the address on his license, it was his driver's license, was to Shantae's house. The ex-wife is telling me, no, that's the address for the ex-girlfriend. He had moved in with her, and he created this whole narrative with her. She found out that he was lying, and she kicked him out. And so I guess after she kicked him out, she then reached out to the ex-wife, kind of the way I did for confirmation. And so the ex-wife was just telling me, whatever that man has told you, it is a lie. She said, I got out before it got too bad. She said, because once I knew he was lying, I was out. She was like, because he's never going to change. And so, again, conversation went on and on. And so finally, we were getting ready to get off the phone. And before we got off the phone, I said to her, I said, if everything is a lie, I said, I have one question for you. And she said, sure. I said, how is your daughter? I said, how is your daughter? She said, my daughter's fine. And I said, okay. She said, what did he say about my daughter? And I will be honest with y'all, I didn't have the heart to tell her. So what I said instead was, oh, no, it was, with everything with COVID, I think he mentioned that she might have had COVID or was exposed to it. I downplayed it bad. I wasn't going to tell that woman that he said her daughter passed away. So I said, obviously I'm glad to hear that kids are fine. She said, look, whether you stay with him or not, it's your choice. She said, he ain't going to change. He ain't going to change at all. She said, this is what he does. She said, you're not the first. You're not going to be the last. She said, he did it to me. She was very, very encouraging, because she was just like, you do not blame yourself. She said, we both ignored red flags, but it is not your fault. She said, this is on him. And so we, once again, I thanked her for her time, got off the phone. I took the long way home that night. I could not be around him. I could not be around him. I had to figure something out. I had to figure some things out. So I took the long way home. What does that mean? It means that I probably could have taken 75 to 285, but I probably took 20 to 75 to 285 to 675, kind of like I just took the long way home. A couple of days later, because my mind was spinning. A couple of days later, at this point, I'm turning into the FBI, CIA, and Homeland Security all in one. Literally. I'm trying to find everything. And he's carrying on his business as usual. Nothing changed with him. He had no idea that I had spoken to the ex-wife. He had no idea I had gone to the court and saw his divorce documents. He had no idea. So a couple of days later, I decided to look up his mother's obituary. look up the mother's obituary. And down at the bottom where it talks about, oh, she's preceded in death by, and it lists all the people, the family members that died before. And then it says, leaving behind to cherish her memory. It lists the husband, his dad, her husband, excuse me. Let me start over. It lists her husband, which is Legion's dad. It lists Legion's brother that lives in Philly and his wife, because again, this is 2000. She passed away in 2015. So it lists Legion, the brother in Philly, and his wife and daughter, her granddaughter. It lists Legion and his wife. I think it was like Latoya or something. Something. It did not list the ex-wife I just spoke to. And it clearly said Legion, his wife, Latoya. Then it listed the brother in Nashville, his wife, Jane, or whatever. So I'm thinking to myself, there's two things I was thinking immediately. Number one, who is Latoya? Never heard that name before. Never heard that name before. So I was thinking, who is Latoya? And then number two, where are the two sisters? Shantae and Kim. Shantae lives in Douglasville, married with 2 kids. Kim lives in Augusta, and I believe he told me she worked at like Procter and Gamble. So why aren't they listed on here? Because apparently, go back to the video. I posted it on there. I gave y'all background on the family. He apparently was one of 5 through both parents. Brother in Philly, older brother, younger brother in Nashville, an older sister in Douglasville, and a baby sister in Augusta. So why is it on his mother's obituary there's only three children named? Where are the 2 sisters? So I'm even more like, what in the hell is going on? And then I started thinking to myself, why wouldn't they list Shantae? Like, they talk all the time, so I know that they're close because he talks to Shantae all the time. So I really was confused. Again, keep in mind, I'm trying to give y'all insight into how I was thinking May of 2021, because I still didn't find out a lot of stuff at that time. I found out enough to figure out, okay, it's not a question of if he's lying. That was over. It's not a question of if he's lying. The question now is becoming, what else is he lying about? So we had the phone call with the ex-wife. Now I see an obituary that apparently there's another wife. I know on our marriage certificate, it only states he had one previous marriage. I had 0, he had 1. So this is how I'm thinking in my head, which is, okay, what am I missing here? I know we've established that he's lying, but who the fuck is Latoya? Like, I'm really trying to understand who is Latoya. And again, he's hobbling around the house, limping, and I'm in our bed, in the bedroom. I could not get on Google fast enough to try to figure some stuff out. So, see the mom's obituary, study it, and at this point, I'm now trying to figure out, okay, what's the game plan? What is the game plan?